Welcome to Power Up with NSA North Texas, a show about finding, hearing, and maximizing valuable insights from some of the world's leading business and lifestyle speakers. Each week, international keynote speaker and National Speakers Association North Texas chapter president Betty Coffey sits down with some of the most exciting speakers this side of the globe to hear from these subject matter experts what's making a difference in business today and learn all there is to know about people, profits, and productivity in business from some of the world's best motivators. This is Power Up with NSA North Texas. And now, here's your host, Betty Coffey.
This is Betty Coffey, your host from the National Speakers Association North Texas chapter. The NSA, National Speakers Association, is the premier organization for professional speakers. Our members reach guests and people every day as thought leaders, as consultants, as coaches, as trainers, as educators, as humorists, and speakers and motivators, and we do it around the globe. Some of the cutting-edge topics we cover on this show are the exact cutting-edge topics that our clients want to hear from the subject matter experts. What are the issues? What are the problems? What are some of the results? And how can we fix some of these things? And you're going to hear on our show from our own subject matter experts at NSA North Texas. So I'm so excited about my guest today. Woohoo! Yes, that's right. Mr. Darren Ford. You know why I'm excited? The guy has and part of his title is about desserts. And we all know that Betty likes her desserts. Chocolate, caramel, whatever it takes, okay? So the title today is How Sharing Dessert Can Boost Organizational Success.
That's it.
Am I going to have to cook dessert on this at all?
No, but you're going to be hungry when we're done.
Okay, that figures. So Darren Ford, why are we talking about this today? Bottom line, because we're not, we're not getting everything done, and we're not getting along because we're not getting along. We're not being as productive as we could be. Politics, the news, social media. We see rude behavior everywhere, every day.
We do.
It's almost like we're kind of getting used to it. I hate that. This incivility impacts our lives and our business performance. But there's one skill that can reverse this crisis, putting us on a path to getting along and reaching our potential as both individuals and as organizations. And that's what we're going to hear about. I'm excited about that.
Okay, let's go.
All right, Mr. Dessert Man. Darren has a very eclectic background. For much of his professional career, he was in sales and sales management in the computer advertising field. Then in the early 2000s, when we all got kind of caught up in that tech downturn, he hit pause on his professional career and moved to Bulgaria. I have no idea why Bulgaria.
Experience. Yeah.
We'll find out why Bulgaria.
That's a whole nother podcast, though.
That's right. Where he was the headmaster of a small English-speaking school. After 4 years in Bulgaria, he returned to the States and has enjoyed several people. Now, when he talks about people, it's capitalized, it's bold, it's out there, it's underlined, because he really truly believes in people. And he worked in people development opportunities. He's been the director of employee development and vice president of culture and engagement at a large finance and auto finance company in Dallas. He has his own consulting and training organization, and currently he leads people development efforts at a large industrial manufacturer. So I can't wait to talk about people
and dessert.
And desserts.
Okay.
So how does sharing dessert boost an organizational success? I can't wait to go into this. So tell me about this, all about culture. Tell me about your culture keynote, why it's so important and its effect on your audiences.
So it's the most important message I've ever delivered. I have a couple of talks. I talk about leadership. We've always needed effective leadership, and probably today more so than ever.
Yes,
we need effective
absolutely.
leadership. So I talk about that. I wrote a book on millennials. We talk about integrating them into the workforce, so multi-generational workforces. I talk about that. But probably I would say the most important message I've ever delivered is this one about building a value others culture. And you mentioned it earlier, we're not getting along, right?
Yeah.
And we feel it. It's in politics, it's in just society in general, and you add technology to it, and it's even worse, right? We say things, we tweet things about people and about things and make comments with emotion that we would never do face to face.
That's true. We think we can get by with it, right?
Absolutely. And so we've got to. I love the way Michael Hoffman was great. He said this a couple of weeks ago. He put it this way. He was talking about customer service, but he said that the interaction between people is tremendously heated, and we need to turn down the heat. So, Michael, thank you. I'm not going to steal it. I'll give you credit every time, but it's a great line, and that's true. And so this talk that I have, it does that. It's how do you build either personally as an individual viewpoint or as a culture in an organization, how do you build that value, a culture where people are valued for who they are, regardless of gender, regardless of generation, who they are. And so it's a simple concept, not always simple to do. And so I've broken it down into 5 strategies, 5 steps that if you do those steps well, you'll turn down the heat.
Okay, let's turn down the heat out there, make it more civil. So, okay, what are the 5 strategies?
So I think there's a slide for this, and there's 5 of them. First one is, and it starts with V, and it spells value, and it starts with V, viewing people as important and unique. I mean, we're all different. We have different backgrounds, different personalities, different experiences, and there's value in different skills that we bring to the table, and there's value in that. So it's a conscious choice to view people as important and unique. Then we move into assisting in small ways, being a servant leader, helping people, and there's all kinds of ways to help people. There's mowing somebody's lawn, it's taking somebody to the airport, opening doors, wiping up the sink, after you use your bathroom in your office. We're right outside LBJ and Dallas Tollway, so rather than hitting the accelerator when somebody's trying to merge on, because we all want to, we don't want anybody to get in front of us, but back off and let somebody else merge on. So it happens all the time. So value somebody else and make their life a little easier. So that's assisting in small ways. And then we move into listening. And not listening on a scale of 1 to 10, although that's important. We all want to be a 10 out of 10 listener. But it's this idea of listening with the idea of being influenced. It's we all have 2 or 3 or maybe 4 core beliefs that we're not going to change, and that's okay. But outside of that, it's being able to listen without that emotion, without that heat, and being willing to maybe even change your mind every once in a while. And then we move on to understanding similarities. Betty, there's so much more that brings us together than separates us. And if you and I spend time, we already know we like dessert, right? Together,
is true.
right?
Where's my dessert? Did you bring me dessert?
No,
today?
I'm sorry. It was. I didn't want to mess up the cameras and
Cut
the tables here.
There you go.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
I kind of knew that answer. I'm a dog person too, right? And so, we could go on like Mexican food, Dallas Cowboys, whatever. And once we connect on those similarities, then we can talk about our differences. That's where the
desserts comes in.
Absolutely. It's always easier to talk about differences over a good dessert.
This is true.
And then finally you move to E, explaining. And that's just telling. I wanted to use tell, but I needed an E. So it's explaining people's worth, telling them, because so often we don't hear, as individuals, we don't hear often how people or how we're valued. And so those are the 5 steps. It's viewing people as important. It's assisting in small ways. It's listening with this idea of being influenced. It's understanding how we connect and how we're similar, and then just explaining, telling people how they're valued. And if we do those things, we will turn down the heat.
I love that idea. Yeah. Your very, very first one, which was, I think, viewing people as unique and important. We don't always do that. We might see somebody, we automatically make an observation on that person. We already have an opinion. First opinions. Mm-hmm. And very seldom, I think, do we really say, oh, that person's really unique and important, and think of all the positives instead of looking at them in a negative
Absolutely.
way.
Mm-hmm.
And can we condition ourselves to do this?
I think it's a choice. I think it's a choice that people make, and I think if we make it ahead of time, it makes it easier to view this. And look, I understand there's people who are difficult to like or to understand or to value. Sometimes I understand that, but sometimes you do that. I don't remember who made this quote, but somebody said, "How do you value people who are difficult to value or love?" And you need to do that not because out of who they are, but out of who you are, your character.
Oh,
right? That's
I like
why.
the way you
exactly.
say
So that makes it easier, even for those difficult people. It's because it's a reflection on me how I treat that person.
Yes. I've watched you. You're on the board for our National Speakers Association in North Texas. You walk the walk and talk the talk, sir, because as you were kind of going through your 5 points, you do listen. You listen to our chapter. You listen to other board members. You also have gone tremendously out of way in membership and growing our membership this year by doing the little things that you
tried
were
to.
talking
I've
about,
tried to.
assisting in small ways.
Right. Yeah.
So I love that. I love that when I have a guest and they really believe and they practice what they preach.
Look, I'm human. I don't always do it, but I try.
So tell me about, just go ahead and explain one of those strategies in depth that is very meaningful to you, that has a great message to it.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and they're all important, but it does start with that with that viewing of people as important, and it's a choice. And so in the presentation, I talk about my mom. I lost my mom. Well, that's 2.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. She lived up in Tulsa with my dad about 60. They married almost 60 years. And the last few years, she wasn't in the best of health, and so her health declined, and she had to go be admitted to a thing called a skilled nursing facility. I think they call it a SNF.
Yep.
And they were trying to nurse her back to health, and her health declined some more, and so she finally had to go to a hospital. And so she went to a hospital in Tulsa, and it wasn't a bad experience. It was what I thought a hospital experience should be. And they nursed her back to health after 2 or 3 weeks. She went back to the SNF, and 1 week later, her kidneys failed. And so she had to go back to the hospital, and this time she went to St. Francis. Oh, can I say?
Sure, go
I guess
ahead.
I do. I do it in the presentation, right?
Yes, you do it.
So St. Francis Hospital was much closer to where my dad lived. And the experience was radically different than the first one. And I don't know if you know a lot about the healthcare, but in hospitals, often doctors and nurses or doctors and staff, they do this. They don't get along very well.
Yes.
But there was something different about St. Francis, the way that the staff talked to each other and interacted with each other, and it carried into how they treated their customers and their patients. And there was one nurse in particular, her name was Megan. The way that she took care of my dad, he was losing his partner of 60 years. And she took care of him, and she took care of me. I'm a basket case losing my mom, and amazingly, the way that she took care of my mom, and my mom didn't even know that she was being taken care of. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I'm in this weird place. I'm losing my mom, but I also do this people development thing, and I'm like, what's different about this than the other experience?
Right.
And so I do what a lot of us do when faced with a problem today. I hit that magic Google button on my internet machine, and I looked up the values of St. Francis, and they had dignity, the word dignity. And I need to commit that their definition to memory, but they talked about the uniqueness of life of every individual and treating it with reverence and being special with that person. And so I love that term because it's warm, it's got deep meaning. And some people have said, well, hey, it's a hospital, so they had to use a term like that, but the other hospital didn't. And then they said, well, it's kind of a religious term. It was, and it was St. Francis. Well, the other one was a saint something as well.
Yeah.
Right. So it was a choice that hospital made to treat people, and it reflected in how the staff worked with each other and how they treated their patients and their customers. It's very much in line with, for all the HR folks out there, you'll probably be familiar with a company called O.C. Tanner. Mm-hmm. O.C. Tanner is a company that helps organizations value or recognize their employees. And they have an institute, and they research employee recognition. And Kevin Ames, who is the director of that institute, I heard him speak one time, and he said this. He goes, inside each individual are the seeds of greatness. And an organization's responsibility and a leader's responsibility is to build an environment where those seeds can bloom. Isn't that awesome?
I love that.
So inside you, inside me, inside everybody who's watching here, we all have seeds of greatness. And so an organization's job is to set up something where they're valued and those seeds bloom and we can do great work. So it's a much I wish we had more time. It's a much deeper point, but you kind of get the idea.
That dignity, I think every hospital or healthcare organization I've ever been into talks about dignity, or it's in their mission statement, vision statement, whatever. But St. Francis Hospital truly believed it and operated by it, and that was obviously a strength in their culture.
Yeah, a lot of companies, they have values, and they'll put them on a plaque and they put them on the wall, and that's what they are. They're words on a wall.
Right.
And so I don't know what St. Francis does to live those values out, but from a dignity standpoint, and I love that term, the dignity. It's so. The terms we use in human resources today, and I don't want to offend all my HR people out there watching, but I don't even like the term human resources, right? Because we're people.
People. That's right.
We have emotions, we have desires, we have career ambitions, we have families to feed. And so, and you combine that with some other terms like retention policies. Now all of a sudden you're talking like we have a plan to retain our humans. That's just, it's cold.
That's right.
And so people, it's all about people.
So why don't organizations make culture the priority that they should?
It's a great question. I ask that question all the time because the evidence is clear that companies that build those cultures where they're engaging and they're healthy. I mean, there's no debate. Those companies outperform companies who don't do that. So I think there's probably a couple of reasons. There's a short-termness that we live in today. That's right. It's all about these quarters, especially driven by Wall Street. It's driven by this quarter's numbers or next quarter numbers. And building the culture, it's a long-term process. So that's one reason. It's hard to measure, right? We can measure when we buy new equipment or install a new, build a new building or whatever. We can kind of measure that. It's hard to measure the return on people development or culture development efforts. And then I think some companies just think they already do a good job. There's so many companies who say, they use the term, our people or our employees or people are our greatest asset. And that's,
I've seen that.
It's well-meaning, but this equipment, that's an asset, and this building's an asset. You're not an asset. I'm not an asset. What? We're people.
That's right.
Right? And so even though they're well-meaning, building a culture, Tom Peters talks about this all the time, author of In Search of Excellence. He talks about it's a minute-by-minute, deliberate, exhaustive, radical approach to building those cultures. It's not an easy thing to do.
Nope.
So
it takes time.
I don't know. That's probably why companies don't do it. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort.
So let's get back to my topic of the day, desserts. I had my health bar this morning. I've had it. I'm looking for a dessert.
You have something better, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So talk to me more about what that's all about. And you were talking about Italy, I believe.
So, building either a personal worldview of valuing people or
Yes.
that culture in your organization. It's a simple concept, not always easy. So that's why I broke it up into 5 steps. But some people, let's face it, some people do it better than others. And I kind of put myself in that camp. I thought I just kind of naturally do that. But I was in Italy with my beautiful bride. We've been married, November will be 32 years that we've been married.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very good.
And so for our 30th, we went with some dear friends, another couple, and we went to Italy, and we traveled all over Italy. But at one point, we found ourselves in Florence, and it was night. And it was just an amazing dinner, and we had with drinks beforehand, and the biggest steak I have ever seen, and steak and wine and an after dinner drink and a dessert and another drink and another. At one point, when the server came to me, I said, "No mas," and I didn't realize I'm speaking Spanish, not Italian, right? I wasn't even speaking his language. And we were done, but then the server brought over a dessert to the table next to us, and it was some kind of a souffle-ish looking thing, and he put it down in front of the people, and he took a spoon and he smashed it, and the steam came up, and then he took this carafe of chocolate and he poured it in, and it was, we couldn't eat another bite, but we were all just staring at it. In fact, I think I was drooling a little bit. And the gentleman realized that, and he picked up, he spoke Italian, he didn't speak English, and he picked it up, and he turned to my wife, and he offered her a bite.
Oh.
So,
wow.
And so now, I don't know exactly what he was thinking, but it had to be along the lines of, he valued us as travelers, as visitors to his country and his city, and he wanted us to have a great experience. And so it was at that moment I thought, I think I do this pretty well, but I've never offered dessert to a stranger before, right? And so for even those people who think they can do it better, that they do it pretty well, we all have more opportunities to get better.
Both personally and professionally.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. What can a leader do now to really make a difference in the environments of their people?
Well, now you're starting to talk about leadership a little bit, and that's again, I make that into a simple concept as well. Jack Welch used to say he would make the distinction between simple and simplistic. Not simplistic. It's simple. He didn't believe in simplistic. He did believe in simple. And so when I talk about leadership, I break it down into 2. I think leaders just need 2 things. They need to have character, and they need to be vulnerable, because everything flows from if they are a person of high moral character, a leader of character, everything flows from that. They'll be honest. They'll be caring. They'll be empathetic. They'll have energy on those days that they don't really feel like having energy, right?
Right.
So character drives everything. But let's face it, we're human. And so sometimes we're going to fail. And so when we have that lapse of, and I'm not talking about a fatal lapse of character like lying and cheating. But those days when you come in because you're sick and you do snap at an employee, or you don't get back when you said you were going to. When you have those minor lapses of character, it's being willing to admit it and say, I messed up and I apologize. I'm sorry, and I'll do my best never to do that again. And so, if a leader has those two things, I think that they'll choose. Absolutely, it does. Yes. And then one of the things that leader will do is he'll view those people. He won't view his employees or for that matter, his vendors or the community or the person going down LBJ. He won't view them as somebody who's in their way. He's going to view them as something as that unique individual, and he's going to do something to help them.
I love that. All right, I'm going to take a little bit of a twist and a turn here. When we're talking about your subject and honoring people and desserts, talk to me about the millennials and how that all fits within this concept and ideal.
I think millennials, we talk so much about them.
Poor guys.
Really unlike any other generation,
yes,
right? Hey, millennials, I love you.
I do too.
I think you're the best. I think
they
you're
get picked on.
They do,
yeah.
and so I think the reason being is because they think the primary reason. I mean, that's a deep subject, but one of the reasons is because they just think differently. And researchers will say that technology.
Good for them.
Well, right. And researchers say that their brains fire different than your brain and my brain, and because of technology.
Right.
They've never known a world. They've never known a world with of phones that have cords.
Yes.
Right. And so they've never not been connected, and because of that, their brains have formed differently, and they fire differently, and so they think differently. Well, what happens is. Me as a baby boomer leader, I have a new millennial who joins my team, and I say, hey, here's the process for doing something, 10 steps. And that millennial will very quickly say, well, I can combine 4 and 5, and I can get rid of 7. I can do it.
Right.
I can do it in 7 steps.
Right.
And as soon as we say, no, we do 10 steps here, right? It drives them crazy, and then what we think is, lazy. They're trying to cut out 3 steps, and it's not. It's that they just think differently, and so. What we need to do as leaders and as organizations is harness the power of that different thinking. And when you think about it, we talk about millennials as being new to the workforce. They're approaching 40. We've had them for a long time. And so we get you combine them with Generation Z, and you put them all together, and we're all better together than we are by ourselves.
We just have to go back to your number 1, right?
Viewing people is important and unique. That's right.
No matter who they are, what age they are, whatever.
Gender, ethnicity.
I love your 5 steps. I love your 5 strategies. Okay, you're a big quote guy. Big quote guy. You use a lot of them in your presentations, your workshops, your seminars, and what you do. Give me a couple of your favorites that apply to some of the things we're talking about.
Yeah, I do like a lot of quotes. I'll go back to Tom Peters. He said this. Again, he wrote the book In Search of Excellence. He says, if not excellence, then what? And if not excellence now, then when? Right, I mean, it really makes sense,
yes.
Right? I mean, I believe in being average, or I'll be excellent, but not until Monday, right? So that's kind of crazy. And the other one I use is from old Abe Lincoln, and I use it in conjunction with the presentation. He said this. He goes, I don't like that man. I need to get to know him better.
I love that.
Right,
if we all had that idea.
Right, and that goes back to that connecting on similarities, right? My first impression is, there's something about you, Betty, but if I get to know you better.
You're going to love me.
Abs.
You're going to find
What's
out.
not to love?
We like hot fudge sundaes.
Right.
Maraschino
cherries.
And dogs. There you go. Okay, so talk to me. I know you're a phenomenal speaker. You're in high demand.
Thank you.
You're a coach, a consultant. You do workshops. You do seminars. What's it like working when someone calls you and they want to work with you, Darren? Talk to me about that.
So 2 things. I try to be just incredibly easy to work with, right? I mean, I work my schedule around the customer or the meeting planner, whoever I'm talking to. I'll call on the phone. We'll have those discovery calls on their time frame, and I don't require a lot. I need a cup of coffee or a glass of water. That's really
diva.
I am not a diva.
I love
no,
that. You're
I'm
not a diva.
I'm not a diva. So that's one thing. And the other thing is I try and customize everything to the client's business plan. I mean, the 5 steps are the 5 steps, and when we talk about leaders, it's character and vulnerability. But when somebody contacts me, they've got a specific objective they're trying to hit, or a business pain that they're trying to relieve. And so I'll take my work and I try and apply it and relieve that pain or achieve that objective. So I'll customize everything I do to what the customer is asking for.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I know your ratings and your testimonials are fantastic. So nice job.
Thank you.
Okay, you've done 2 books.
I have.
Let's talk about your
I
books
have.
for a second, please.
I have. So I mentioned that earlier, the Millennial Challenge, How to Unleash Today's Young Talent. So it's all about millennials, and it was really written for old people like me, to understand millennials. And it gives some tips. It talks about who they are and how to take advantage of them. And the other one I wrote.
That's great.
This was the first one I wrote, 3 + 4 = success. So I think there's 3 skills that if we do them well, we'll be successful.
Uh-huh.
And those 3 skills are effective communication, critical thinking, and valuing people.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's 4 mindsets on top of that. If you use those, for lack of a better term, you'll supercharge your success. And those 4 mindsets are questions. Am I willing to be a continuous learner? Am I willing to work hard? Am I willing to work hard? Am I willing to work hard? Exactly.
I knew that was coming.
Right.
Gotcha.
I don't think success is a secret. Just think well, communicate well, value the people around you, be willing to learn new things, and just show up and do your best every day. If you do those things, you'll be successful.
I love that. How can people get your books?
Easy. Hit that. Well, it's not the Google button. It's the Amazon button. You can go straight to Amazon, put in either the names of the books or put in Darren Ford. They pop up, and if you're a Prime member, you can have it the next day.
Awesome. Okay, so your contact information, let's talk about that for a second. Your email address, please.
Okay, I try and make it easy, right? It's Darren, Darren. That's how you spell my name. Darren at DarrenKFord.com.
Gotcha. And your Twitter, you use Twitter a lot.
At Darren K. Ford.
At Darren K. Ford, that all makes sense. Website?
www.darrenkford.com.
Okay, and the old-fashioned way, if somebody wants to reach out.
You want to call me the old-fashioned way,
Yep.
right? 972-854-1960. Call me. I hope to hear from you.
Good. Before we wrap this, I've heard you speak also about a term that you've used called schedule honoring somebody. Share that with us.
Yeah, something at the end of the value others presentation, I have people pull out their phone, and I'll say, look, I want you to put something in your calendar. Think of somebody in your company, a colleague, if you're a leader, somebody reports to you, and put on your calendar a time when you're going to value them. Because typically, what we put on our calendars,
what we're doing,
we do.
That's right.
We accomplish.
Our to-do list.
It's a to-do list, and I want them to be deliberate. I want them to take them to lunch. I want them to handwrite them a card and hand it to them. Be very deliberate. But then I also, I say, look, what we're talking about it's not just work, it's life. And so I challenge them. I can't make them, but I encourage them. I say, take out your phone or keep your phone out, and I want you to think of somebody in your life who needs to hear from you that they're valued. And I want you to send them a message. And I join them. I do it from the stage as well. And I've had all kinds of great responses. I was doing it in the Oklahoma HR conference last year. And a woman started to laugh, and I asked her if she could share. And she goes, yeah. She goes, I texted my husband, honey, I love you, and I value you for all that you do for the family. And he wrote back, he goes, thank you, are you cheating on me? And so it was a funny moment. And we said, well, obviously, you need to tell your husband more of that, right?
Right.
But then on the other end of the spectrum, I had a woman come up to me. I was at a healthcare association doing a presentation. And she walked up, and I don't remember what she said she valued, but she said, I had texted my adult son that I valued him and why. And he texted back, he goes, thanks, Mom, I've never heard you say that.
Amazing.
And so that's the thing about valuing people.
Beautiful.
Sometimes when we tell people that you're going to value somebody, you're going to tell somebody that they're worth something who may not hear it this week, this month, this year, or in some cases their entire life. And we get just as much of a blessing too.
Absolutely.
When we do that.
It comes back to us.
Oh, absolutely.
But just scheduling, honoring somebody. It
Absolutely.
doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be really take a lot of time, but it is so meaningful.
It's something as simple as a handwritten note.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's
which is a lost art, by the way, right? We don't do that very much.
Note.
Right.
But that could be the dessert of the day.
There
you go.
Right.
I love it. All right, Mr. Darren, this has been absolutely.
It's been awesome.
I love this, and it's been fun.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You truly, truly believe in what you speak about. You're passionate about it.
People are great.
And I know that comes across to your audiences.
People are great.
If there's one last thing you want to leave our audience with today, what would it be?
Organizations are about results, but it's people who deliver those results, people who do the work. And so my passion is to help organizations ignite that culture where people can do their best work.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so I want you to reach out, talk to the dessert guy.
Right. We'll share dessert. We'll go have dessert together.
And I love it. It is a dessert. So thank you so much for being
Thanks
on our
for
show
having
today.
me. It's been awesome.
You've been great.
Thank
you
you
so much. There you go. Nice job,
Good
sir.
job.
And thank you for being with NSA North Texas Power Up Podcast today, where we continue to be better, to be faster, to be stronger. Remember, it's all about you powering up. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Take care. Eat dessert. Honor somebody.
Right.
And power up.
Bye. Bye.
Good job.
It was awesome. It was good.
Thanks for listening
Thank you.
to Power Up with NSA North Texas. To find out more about today's guest or NSA North Texas, visit www.speaker.org. To find out more about Power Up, visit our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/groups/NSA North Texas. And to find out more about Betty, visit www.bettycoffeepresents.com.